Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
Hello and welcome to War Horses, the only college equestrian podcast that's enjoying an early start to the Thanksgiving break. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Let's talk about some college equestrian. Well, that's right, the Thanksgiving break is coming up this weekend, but before that arrives, we've got some exciting action to talk about. So let's head right into some meat recaps. All right, we'll start out with Texas A&M at Baylor. You know, I kind of thought A&M was going to win this. I think we predicted this was going to be 12-7 in favor of Texas A&M. But again, you never know. The home team might do really well and get the upset. Let's see how things went. The first event was flat. That went 4-1 for Texas A&M. That's kind of what we expected. Reining was next. That was 2-2. That was even. That's actually pretty good. Baylor kept it close there, a little bit closer than we expected. Then we had fences come up. That was 3-1 for Texas A&M. That's about what we expected. And then horsemanship ended up being 3-2 for Texas A&M. And that's a little bit better for Baylor than expected. So anyway, we ended up with a 12-6 Texas A&M win. A little bit closer than what was projected. Good road win for the Aggies. They finished the fall really strong. The one thing you can look at this one is how that they were even in reining. They were projected to win by about 4 points, but that's really just nitpicking because all the other events pretty much went as expected. For Baylor, like I said, they did real well in reining, but they did pick up their first home loss of the season, which kind of confirms that while they are riding better than they did last season, they're probably not one of the contenders for the national title this year. All right, next meet to look at, Auburn at Georgia. This was the big one. Now, I warned everybody going into this one that Georgia has improved in this last month. So let's see how much they've improved. The first event was fences. That went 3-2 for Auburn. Initially, this was going to be a 2-2 tie, but then they did a score change, and the tie point ended up going to Auburn. So everything was going as projected so far. Auburn got the 1 point advantage there. Then we had horsemanship. That went 4-1 for Georgia, which was a big upset performance for Georgia here. This one was projected to be a 1 point Auburn advantage, and obviously it did not end up that way. So that made things 6-4 Georgia at the half, and both of those remaining events were favored for Georgia, so things did not look great for Auburn. Then we had the flat. That went 3-2 for Auburn, so good job for the Tigers. They were projected to lose this by about 2 points, but they ended up winning it by 1 point. So what that did was that pulled them up within a point of the Bulldogs overall. Then we went over into reining. That went 3-2 for Georgia as expected. So that made the final score Georgia 11, Auburn 9. So this was a big win for Georgia. They showed that those early home losses were probably just flukes. It just took them a while to get going. Now they have gone 3-0 in SEC play, and they lead the conference standings going into the winter break. For Auburn, losing this meet is not really the end of the world. As I mentioned last week, they were expected to lose this one by about 1 or 2 points. That did happen. You would like to see the horsemanship squad do better, but the flat did overperform, and it almost made up for lost points elsewhere. But again, losing this meet on the road, while it's not ideal, it's acceptable. So over we go to Oklahoma State. They went out to California and rode against the 2 California teams. First up, they rode against Fresno State. Now, I thought this one was going to be about a 12-6 win for Oklahoma State. Let's see how things went. Fences was first. This was 3-1 for Fresno State. The Bulldogs did a tiny bit better. They were projected to win that, but they did even better. So good job, good start for them. Then in horsemanship, that went 3-1 for Oklahoma State. So the Cowgirls actually did a little bit better than they were expected. So everybody's doing a little bit better in the things that they're good at. So everything was tied up 4-4 at the half. Then we had the flat, and that went 5-0 for Fresno State, which I got to tell you, you talk about an event upset. Oklahoma State was projected to win the flat by 3 points, but instead they got swept, which is just, wow, unbelievable. But of course, in reining, that one went 5-0 for Oklahoma State. So here we got the Cowgirls. They overperformed what was projected, and they ended up tying the meet up. So pretty good event win for them. So when you total everything up, it was a 9-9 tie at the end. Fresno State ended up winning with the tiebreaker. Now it says here on the score sheet it was 1,505.88 to 1,440.3, but those numbers can't be correct. Fresno State, you have a cell in your spreadsheet for the horsemanship total that is rounding up from 366.25 to 366.3. So that ended up throwing off the rest of your calculations. So you need to look at that because you got to get the math right on these score sheets. And I'll tell you what I would do if I was in charge of the NCEA. So Samantha Huge, if you're listening, or if someone wants to pass this along to her, here is how I would deal with these darn math errors that we keep getting on these score sheets. All right. I would implement a $500 fine for any score sheet that was turned in with math errors on it. And I would also say that the $500 that gets paid for that fine, it will go to the school that found the error, that caught the error. So if you're on a staff of another school and maybe you weren't even in that meet, but you see that there's a math error on one of these score sheets, you could turn in that other school and say, hey, look, they have a math error on there, and make a quick $500. But I would also say that, hey, if you are that school that turned in the score sheet with the error on it, and if you caught the error before anybody else did, well, then we'd just waive the fine, because again, you fixed your own mistake. But yeah, we got to do something about these dang math errors. So yeah, that's how I would fix it. I would just start levying fines if you have math errors, and I would incentivize everybody to find everybody else's errors. Anyway, math errors aside, this was a big home win for Fresno State. Like I've said repeatedly, the home team has a lot of advantages, and if the two teams are close in ability, you would expect to see the home team win. It doesn't always happen, but it did here, so that means Fresno State is doing what they should be doing right now. Good job, Bulldogs. For Oklahoma State, they almost won this, okay? The event totals were really either feast or famine for them, especially in that second half. So if they could just get a little bit more consistency, they would be right up there with that group of the top national contenders. So after that, Oklahoma State, next day, they go over to UC Davis. Now, this one, I think I projected this one to be a 12-8 Oklahoma State win. Let's see what really happened. In fences, that was a 2-2 tie. That's what the stats suggested, so everything's looking good there. In horsemanship, that one ended up being 4-1 for Oklahoma State. So, rough event here for the home team. I think, yeah, that one was projected to be even. It did not go even, so advantage Oklahoma State. In the second half, we had the flat. That was 4-1 for Oklahoma State. I expected about a 1-point win, so obviously this was more, so they're overperforming there. And then we had reining. That was 3-2 for UC Davis. So that was actually a pretty good event result for them, because I think that one I had projected being an Oklahoma State 3-point win in reining. So that kind of changed things up right there. But all it really did was draw the final score a little bit closer. It ended up being 12-7 Oklahoma State. Nice rebound win for Oklahoma State. They get to end the fall season on a high note with this win. For UC Davis, they really had a rough fall. They have taken a step back this season than last season. They had a good performance in reining here in this meet, and maybe they can use that to build on it and head into the spring. Well, that is all of this week's actions. So now, let's take a look at the official Auburn Elvis College Equestrian rankings. Now, we had some interesting scores in the dual discipline meets, so let's see how those impacted the rankings. In the dual discipline teams, at number 1, we have Auburn. The Tigers are 6-1. They've 3-0 at home. They're 3-1 away. And I did say last week that even if Auburn lost, they might stay number 1. Well, that has happened. You could make a case that Texas A&M should be number 1 right now because their loss at Georgia was just a tiny bit better than Auburn's. But there's still the matter of Auburn just thumping the Aggies, something terrible when they went to Auburn. So for right now, the Tigers remain the number 1 team in the nation. Number 2 is Texas A&M. The Aggies are 5-2. They're 3-0 at home. They're 2-2 away. Getting that road win at Baylor was nice. The Aggies are going to get their shot at Auburn at home in the spring, but for now, they'll sit and wait at number 2. Number 3 is TCU. The Horned Frogs are 5-3. They're 3-0 at home. They're 2-3 away. They're done for the fall. They were perfect at home, like I mentioned. They did a little bit better than expected on the road. They did good. They caught Georgia at the right time, basically. So that road win gives them a solid argument that maybe they should be ranked number one, because neither Auburn nor Texas A&M beat Georgia on the road. But it's really hard to move TCU above the two teams that they lost to, even though those were on the road. So we'll just have to wait and see. The Horned Frogs do host Texas A&M in the spring, so we will get to see how they compare after they've had a home and home. But for right now, TCU is number 3. Number 4 is SMU. The Mustangs are 3-4. They're 2-0 at home. They're 1-4 away. And now they also won at Georgia, but they picked up so many other losses on the road that I just seem to be the only person in the sport talking about how good the Mustangs really are. But don't worry, I expect SMU to go on a winning streak in the spring that is going to make the NCEA voters forget all about those 4 road losses. Okay, number 5 is Georgia. The Bulldogs are 5-2. They're 2-2 at home, 3-0 away. Now, Georgia has really turned things around from their rough home start. They jump up 2 spots in the rankings with that big Auburn win and their perfect SEC record right now. Unfortunately for them, the spring season could just be murderous, but we'll see how that goes. Number 6 is Oklahoma State. The Cowgirls are 5-3. They're 2-1 at home. They're 2-2 away, and they have a 1 neutral site victory. Life is not fair for the Cowgirls. They went 1-1 on the road this week, but they're still going to drop 2 spots. Losing at Fresno State doesn't really hurt, but Georgia's win over Auburn hurt the Cowgirls in 2 different ways. First, it gave the team right below them, Georgia, a marquee win for the season. And because that win happened to come against the one team that they could not beat at home, it's an apples-to-apples comparison that Georgia is just a little bit better than Oklahoma State. Now, the Cowgirls are still tied at second place in the Big 12 right now, but their margin of victory, when you compare them, Baylor, and Fresno State, it slides them up to number 2 all by themselves. But the spring conference season looks to be a lot more favorable for them, so they won't even have to really worry about the tiebreaker more than likely. Now, number 7 is another Big 12 team, Fresno State. The Bulldogs are 4-3. They're 1-2 at home, 2-1 away. They got a much-needed home win over a conference opponent this week. That bumps them up into a tie for number 2, but that margin of victory isn't really great for them. So they're actually currently last in the Big 12 standings right now. But even still, they look like they're on track to make the national championship tournament if they could just keep winning the meets that they should win. Number 8 is UT Martin. The Skyhawks are 4-3. They're 1-2 at home, 2-0 away. Now, I really wish the Skyhawks rode against Baylor this fall because it would help settle the argument of who is better between those two. But since UT Martin lost by 1 point at a neutral site to Fresno State, I'm leaning towards the Skyhawks right now. But both teams are going to have a chance to see if they're better than the other in the spring. So for right now, it's okay if you have Baylor and UT Martin flipped, but right now, UT Martin's number 8 in my rankings. And number 9 is Baylor. The Bears are 1-4. They're 1-1 at home and 0-3 away. They finally lost at home. They dropped 2 spots because of that. Now, it's possible that Baylor should be in that top 8. Like I said, it's pretty much a close call between them and UT Martin. They're going to have their chance to prove that they're better, but for now, they're back down to number 9 and they're waiting for that spring season. And then at number 10, we have South Carolina. The Gamecocks are 2-3. They're 0-2 at home and 1-1 away. They really thumped Sweetbriar in that jumping seat only meet a week and a half ago, which was their big highlight after that 2-0 road start. It really looked like South Carolina had improved from last season, but that kind of seems doubtful now since so far they have failed to upset any of their SEC foes like they did last season. Okay, over in the single discipline, we did not have any single discipline meets, so the rankings are the same as the previous week. So I'm just going to run through these very fast without giving any details. I'll go into more detail on these next week. Number 1 is Dartmouth. Number 2 is Sweetbriar. Number 3 is Lynchburg. Number 4 is Charleston. Number 5 is Sacred Heart. Number 6 is Centenary. Number 7 is Swanee. Number 8 is Bridgewater. And number 9 is Berry. All right, so that's the rankings, and because it's the Thanksgiving weekend, there are no meets coming up this weekend, but the week after that, we will have a single discipline meet, so we're going to talk about that next week. So that's this week's show. It was kind of a short one this week, but, enjoy your holiday, everyone. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Thank you very much for listening, and War Horses.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.